Since my wife and I first moved to Spain last year, we've been renting and we're renting again this year. Recently, our friends just bought this beautiful house out in the Campo, and it's given us a little bit of home ownership bug. We've owned 6 homes over the last 20 years, and we've also rented. So during that time, we've had a good mix. But now we live full time off of stocks and dividends and options trades that I'm doing. So I'm rethinking how I'm using that money and whether buying or renting makes more sense. So today I want to go over buying a house versus renting and keeping extra money in the stock market. You see, this is a special time for me because exactly 20 years ago today, I bought my first house. And I want to go back, go over the numbers and see if I should have rented and put the money in the S&P 500 or whether buying was a good decision. Let's find out.
Welcome to 15 Minute Money, the show where I search the financial world for the most up-to-date investment ideas, market trends, and income streams so you don't have to. Let's get into it.
20 years ago, I bought this condo. And everybody at the time, we were like looking for apartments. And everybody was like, you should just buy something. Nobody ever loses money. Like the worst case scenario, you get tired of it after 5 years, you sell it, you break even, and you move on. At least you're not wasting money renting. That was the story. Well, again, it was November 2005. Do you happen to remember what happened November 2008? Yes, global financial crisis. And a lot of times these averages that people tell you about are long-term averages. In long-term, things do seem to work out. But on the short term, you can lose some money. In fact, we lost 12%. In 2009, we ended up selling that condo for a 12% loss. But before I get ahead of myself, let's get into the numbers. Why did we sell the condo in 2009? Well, obviously the global financial crisis was going on. And when we purchased the condo initially in 2005, the condo fee was $80 a month. But we had a bad builder and some other things went on. We actually bought the thing secondhand, but there was a bad builder involved. And one of the units was sinking in some bad clay. And our $80 a month condo fee went up to $250 for the next 5 years. So we decided we're not really condo people. Long story short, we sold it for a 12% loss after those 4 years. But had we held that condo, looking at it now, we're going to look at Zillow. The condo is worth $263,000. So yeah, long story short, we could have held on to the condo and we would have made money and it would have been great. We actually would have made 125% over the last 20 years. 20 years is a long time. What about the S&P 500 during that same time? Had I just rented in 2005 and invested the savings into the S&P 500, what would have happened there? So let's look at the SPY, which is an ETF which monitors the S&P 500. And the S&P 500 since November 2005 is up 1,062%. Yeah, it's pretty good. Case closed, condo in Columbus, Ohio loses to the S&P 500, right? Well, not so fast because it's not as simple as that, is it? So I dug into the real numbers. I wanted to look at what I had to invest at the time because I didn't have $127,000. Basically, what I had was the 3% down payment that I put down. So let's go over those numbers, the real numbers, the most likely numbers of what really happened. So I'm looking at $127,000 purchase price with 3% down. I also had PMI, so that's not really all that fun. So that all in $1,113 per month. That's taxes, that's homeowners insurance, and that is the property fee, and PMI, which premium mortgage insurance, is something you have to pay if you don't have 20% equity in your house. But long-term homeowners are going to tell you, because they know they have experience, that down the road, something is going to happen. And you should be saving for those now, because when it comes, you don't want to have to pull out the old credit card. So a low estimate says that 2 to 3% of the value of your home you should be putting aside for annual expenses coming up. So let's use the lower 2% in this case. So 2% of $127,000 is $2,540 a year, or $212 a month. So let's add the $212 into the $113, and now you get $1,325 a month for responsible homeownership. Now, I was looking for apartments at the time in 2005. I was actually going to try to find an apartment, and then I bumped into this condo thing, and this guy I can like picture sitting in this room with him. He's telling me all the jib jab about buying a house. Anyway, rent at the time, one of the places we were looking to rent was in a nice neighborhood. It was called Gahanna, Ohio. It was $750 a month, and that would have gotten me a 2-bedroom, kind of small, but with a pool. So rent would have saved me the first year $575 per month. I could have then invested that $575 per month into the S&P 500. So rent goes up, right? 5% per year or so, but you got to think of the time frame. Gemini, which is Google's AI, tells me that rent was basically flat from '05 to 15, and that's in Columbus. After 2015, rent ramped up to 8% increases per year over the last decade, but I'm going to base some calculations on the flat rent for that decade. Thanks, global financial crisis. Let's figure out, did I make the right decision? So, no rent increase for 10 years means I could have invested $575 a month extra into the SPY for 10 whole years. So November 2005 to November 2015, the SPY returned 11.3% per year. And that includes a negative almost 37% in 2008. So when people tell you the S&P goes up, 10%, 11% per year, it doesn't just go like this. It's got some big up and downs in between. It averages to 10 or 11% per year, but you have to sit through some pain. So let's go over the numbers again. $3,810 was the down payment money that I used to buy the condo. Over 10 years at 11.3% per year, adding $575 a month, at the end of those 10 years, I would have had $134,121.81 in my investment account, right as rent starts to kick up in Ohio in 2015. So now each month, instead of investing $575, I'm going to have less and less to invest as rent is going up 8% per year. So now for the next 10 years, I have to run a lot more calculations, which is lame. I wish I was better AI than I am, but here goes. I have to run these all by myself. Year 11, we invest $515 per month and rent is $810. Year 12, we invest $450 per month, rent is $875. Year 13, $380 a month, rent's $945. Year 14, $305 per month, rent is $1,020. It's creeping up. It's starting to catch the mortgage. Year 15, we invest $223 per month and rent is at $1,100. Year 16, we're at $135 a month invested and rent is $1,190. Year 17, the break-even month, we invest only $40 per month as rent is now $1,285. And years 18, 19, and 20, the last 3 years, would have been more to rent than the mortgage of $1,325 per month. So we're no longer able to invest any more into the side account. But what does that give us? What is the final investing balance after 20 years? It's 16 years where we were investing some amount into the S&P 500 because of the rent savings. But then the last 3 years, we're actually paying more to rent than we were for home ownership. So let's figure out the numbers. Renting and investing in the S&P 500, $413,960. Now let's take away $12,000 to $15,000 of extra rent over the last 3 years, and we're going to round it off to basically renting and investing the extra over 20 years would have left me with $400,000 in the S&P 500. Earlier, I said I bought the condo in November 2005. I bought it for $127, put the 3% down, and that condo is now worth $263,000. But keeping all things equal, I would still have 10 years left to pay off my condo. My balance now would be about $40,000. So if I sold that condo today for $263,000 with closing costs of about 6 or 7%, that's going to be $16,000 in closing costs, and then $40,000 to pay off the rest of the mortgage, which doesn't seem possible, right? Like, what the heck? Interest is nuts. Anyway, I would be left with a profit after selling the house of $207,000. Every situation is different, but I think at the very least, renting and investing, I think you're going to be ahead 2 to 5% compared to a mortgage. You need to decide what is most important to you. Because as Americans, we are told you have to buy your house. Like, home ownership is the foundation that keeps America going. And that really makes me think, like, now that we're over in Spain, like, we kind of do have this itch to go out and buy something, but so many people live in high-rise apartment buildings in Spain, and they are very happy. So homeownership isn't certainly not the only benchmark of happiness that you can have in your life. And I think I've proven that you can make more money by renting cheaper and investing the rest. So at this point, it comes a decision. Do you want to be the homeowner or do you want to be the renter? Do you want the stability of the house or do you want the freedom from renting? So let's go over a quick list of 5 house purchase advantages versus 5 renting advantages. Number 1, building equity and wealth. So every mortgage payment you make, particularly the portion covering the principal, builds a tangible asset that can grow over time. And through the market appreciation, historically, homeownership has been a major driver of wealth creation for the average American. 2, stable housing costs. With a fixed rate mortgage, principal and interest portion of your payment never changes. Taxes, however, will, but we'll talk about that in a second. So this provides long-term predictability and protection against inflation, unlike rent, which typically rises between 5 and 8% depending on where you live. 3, creative freedom and customization. You have full freedom to renovate, to remodel, to decorate, to upgrade. Anything you see fit to your property, you can do. This truly gives you your space. You don't need to talk to your landlord. You don't need to ask permission. You can just do it. 4, tax advantages. Homeownerships can deduct mortgage interest and property taxes up to a certain point off your federal income, and this can provide significant reduction in your taxes. And then when you sell your house, you can also, most people can write that off their taxes and you don't have to pay tax if you've lived there for 5 years. 5, you've got community roots. Owning a home provides a high degree of stability. You cannot be forced to move due to a non-lease renewal like rent hike, and allows your family to plant long-term roots in a community. You're not going to be forced out by a landlord wanting to sell your place. But renting also has some upside depending on who you are. And renting right now is fitting what I need. Number 1, flexibility and mobility. Renting is ideal if you want to move to Spain or you move frequently for a job or for a lifestyle change. You typically are only tied to a 1-year lease, so it makes it much easier and faster to relocate rather than selling your home. 2, you've got no maintenance. All major and minor repairs, from a leaky faucet to a broken furnace, are the responsibility of the Lord of the land. This saves you a lot of time, it saves you a lot of stress and expenses. Just the other day, the dishwasher broke here in Spain. Called up the landlord, dishwasher's broke. Next day, someone came out to fix it. Didn't cost me 1 penny. Number 3, you've got lower upfront costs. Remember that 3% down payment that I put on the house? It was $3,800, and that's probably what you're going to have to put down to cover the cost of your deposit as well as your last month rent. But then that's it. It's simple and fast and less substantial down than having to do closing costs and moving and all the other things with buying a house. 4, predictable operating costs. While rent can increase, you don't really have to worry about the unpredictable costs of home ownership, like replacing a roof or unexpected special assessments, like what I have the condo fees, or high property tax bills. 5, you've got financial freedom for other investments. This is what we're talking about all around. Because your capital is not so tied down in emergency funds for home repairs and for other things, you have more cash available in more liquid things like the S&P 500. And this can offer you long-term great returns. So home ownership really comes down to what you and your partner or just you decide on. So renting or buying, it's up to you. I think that I've at least proven to myself that investing and renting makes the most sense, especially because you can rent a cheaper place. But my wife doesn't always care about making sense, and she wants to buy a house. So we're looking for that in the future to see what we can do, whether we'll continue to be renters and just investors, or if we will look into something. If we buy something that I'm going to push for something that has income, an avocado farm, or a place out in the Campo that might have 1 or 2 Airbnb rental potentials. That's it for today, guys. Thanks for joining me every week on 15-Minute Money. We explore investing, we explore credit cards, we explore properties. Whatever money is involved, I'll talk about it. I'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining me today on 15-Minute Money, the show where I search the financial world for the most up-to-date investment ideas, market trends, and income streams so you don't have to. I'm your host, Nick Bradley. We'll see you next week.